Yeah, perfect. Lovely.
All right. So look, it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about problem solving. I know that you've had some really esteemed presenters on here in the past, like said Paul Akers. So like I just want to say thanks very much to Steve, to Richie, and the rest of the Dublin network for the opportunity to share some of what we're doing at Ciarán. And I hope that you get something of value from it as well. So
I'm just closing that thing.
As a company, right, and as a business excellence team, we've benefited greatly from a benchmarking business facilitated through the likes of the ICB and through contacts we've made with various employers and at various lean forums over the years. So we've a lot to be thankful for to the lean community in Ireland, and hopefully you can take something away today. In terms of the flow, so I'm going to kick off with a short introduction to Ciarán, and I'll give a general overview and introduction of root cause analysis. I'll take it through a real life example as well. And lastly, then I'll cover off problem solving and like the framework that we've been implementing specifically at Ciarán over the past 18 to 24 months. So look, a bit about myself. I completed a degree in mechanical engineering in 2011, and I started my career working in Bosch and Lomb. And I remember, 2 years into the job, I was asked to backfill for a senior engineer who had gone on maternity leave. And as part of that role, I had engineering and maintenance responsibility for 2 large high volume production lines. And as is typical, like with a few big problems that came up on the lines, and I'll always remember a senior engineer coming in to support me and just being blown away by the approach and the structure applied to diagnose and fix the issues. And I would have always considered myself a kind of a natural problem solver, but I quickly realized that there was a whole field in this that I knew little to nothing about. And from there, really, I developed a keen interest in developing myself within this space. Since then, I've worked with likes of Lake Region Medical, Sanofi, and then most recently Ciarán for about the last 18 months or so. And in 2018, then I completed a master's in lean through WIT, or SETU as it's now known. And so look, since then I've worked in mostly, I suppose since the start of my career, mostly engineering roles, but the last number of years then it's been OpEx focused with a particular focus on problem solving and problem solving training. So who are Ciarán, right? So we're a 100% Irish farmer-owned dairy processing company. We used to be known as Glanbia Ireland, which was part of the overall Glanbia PLC. And Glanbia Ireland was majority owned by a co-op of farmers. And in 2021, then the co-op took full ownership of the Glanbia Ireland business. And as part of that restructuring, the business was rebranded as Ciarán. In terms of some numbers, we're the #1 milk processor in Ireland. We have a milk pool of 3.1 billion litres of milk, right? So imagine enough milk to fill over 1,200 Olympic-sized swimming pools. I don't know if you can actually imagine that. I know I can't, but look, it's a lot of milk, okay? We have 52 retail branches across the country. We sell products to over 100 countries, and we're the largest buyer and user of Irish grain. And look, we've about 2,300 employees. We're a big contributor to the rural economic, I suppose, to rural activity in Ireland, rural economic activity. And in 2022, it was estimated that we generated 5.5 billion in activity and supported over 19,000 jobs. Our business is divided into 3 major categories. We have the agri-business, which includes the farm life and the country life branches and our animal feed products. You have the consumer category then with well-known brands such as like Avonmore, Kilmeaden Cheese, Wexford Cheddar. And then we have the ingredient side of the business, where we sell nutritional ingredients to customers all over the world. We've facilities, I suppose, up and down the country, from Lochagish in County Monaghan, producing UHT cream, to operations in Virginia, Drogheda, Portlaoise, Ballatour, our largest facility in Ballyragged in County Kilkenny, our creamery in Wexford, and then we've got an ingredients operation site in Bellevue on the Waterford-Kilkenny border. I want to play a short video now just to give you a sense of the scale of our operations. Right, so our Bellevue facility has 3 large dryers that dry milk into powder. And this video shows the third dryer getting fitted in 2018 as part of a 100 million euro expansion project. You probably can't hear the sound at the moment, can you?
Not yet, Ciarán, no.
No sound, Ciarán.
Oh, well, it's just a bit of classical music, so you're not missing much, right? But
That's all right.
yeah, there's nothing that you need to hear. You can see just components of the dryer and the evaporator there being lifted into the building during the construction phases. There's the cone of the dryer, so the end piece, I suppose, of the drying process. That's the top of the dryer main chamber then getting lifted in. So yeah, look, hopefully that just gives you a sense of the scale of our ingredients operation sites at least. And just to mention, that's one of 3 dryers in one facility, right? And these are very complex, very large pieces of equipment. When they go wrong, like it can and does have a major impact on our ability to deliver. So we need high-level problem solvers with exceptional technical process knowledge to be able to work through the problems when they arise. So problem solving is incredibly strategically important to Ciarán. In terms of problem solving and root cause analysis, I want to give you a bit of an introduction into it now in terms of what it's all about, right? Lean is about simplicity. So for the sake of simplicity and clarity, I like to introduce people to problem solving using 3 steps. The first step is all about the problem itself. So assessing the impact of the problem and defining what the problem actually is. The second step is analysis. The goal here is to identify cause and effect and to understand the root cause. Thirdly, if we're going to solve the problem, we need to implement solutions for the causes that we've established through the analysis. By removing the causes of our problems, we prevent them from coming back. And this is in stark contrast to simply reacting to the symptoms and applying band-aid fixes. These might stem the bleeding, but they don't address the root cause of the issue. So let's talk about the first step for a moment, which is defining the problem. Now, why do we need to define the problem? To give you an example, if I showed this picture to 50 people on the street and I asked them what the problem was, I'd be very confident that 48 or 49 of them would say the tire has a puncture or a flat tire or some derivation thereof, right? And I'm sure there's some of you on this call thinking, yeah, that's exactly what I think the problem is. But the flat tire is not the problem, it's the symptom. The problem is the impact of the flat tire. So if this is your car and you're stuck on the side of the road, the problem is that you can't get to where you need to be and your car is stuck on the side of the road. You might be in dire need of a bathroom, you might be driving someone to a hospital in an emergency, or maybe you just can't afford to repair the tire. These are all contextual pieces of information that define the problem or the problems created from the symptom. Problems show in the form of symptoms, but not all symptoms are problems. For example, this image could be from a car in a scrapyard. Exact same symptom, but in this case, there's no impact, so it's not a problem. Right, so the first step is about going from symptom to problem. Because if you don't know what the problem is, how can you solve it? Or how do you even know it needs to be solved, right? Typically, we also define where the problem is happening, who is affected by it, when it occurs, and all other important attributes associated with it. We might do a level of data analysis, visualization, and use various problem-solving tools throughout the step, depending on the complexity of the problem. Step 2 then is all about the analysis. And for this, I'm going to step you through a real-life example. So earlier this year, one of our apprentices, our first-year apprentices, received a chemical injury on his hand. You can see in the image of the hand up here on the left-hand side, the progression of the injury over a 9-day period. Luckily, he wasn't majorly hurt. He recovered very quickly and no lasting damage. But this is the type of incident that we need to do a root cause analysis on, because we do not want something like this to reoccur. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of the 5 why technique. The idea is simple, right? You keep asking why until you establish the root cause. So what we asked ourselves is, well, why did the chemical injury occur? The chemical injury occurred because he dipped his hand into caustic. Why did he dip his hand into caustic? Because he reached into a drain to retrieve a spanner. So he was working in the proximity of the drain, the spanner slipped, fell into the drain. He reached in to retrieve the spanner and dipped his hand into the caustic. Now, why did he do that? Because he didn't realize it was a drain. He didn't know it could contain any liquid. Why? Lack of plant experience, knowledge. Why? Again, insufficient training on the equipment and the drain network. So this is the 5th why, right? And this is typical where a lot of investigations would stop. However, this isn't a complete picture, because in reality, there's very rarely a single root cause. So let's keep going, right? He reached into the drain because he didn't realize it was a drain. Yes, true. But also because there was no cover on the drain, okay? If there was a cover on the drain, he would have had to remove the cover first, in which case he would have seen that there was liquid in there and he wouldn't have put his hand in there. Why was there no cover? Because this drain had actually been modified some years previously as part of modification works, and the cover had never been refitted. Okay, so here we've gone from kind of a linear standard 5 why that most people would be familiar with, and we've introduced an and function. And both of these causes, the cover had to be removed, and he also he had to not realize it was a drain in order for him to reach in to the drain to retrieve the spanner. If we keep going then, so yes, he dipped his hand into caustic because he reached into the drain, but also because there was caustic in the drain, right? If there was no caustic in the drain, he wouldn't have dipped his hand into caustic. So again, another and function here introduced. Why was there caustic in the drain? Because there was a leaking valve that was leaking acid into the drain. Why was that? Because we had a worn seal. Why? Because we had no preventative maintenance on that valve. So here we've gone from a single linear cause chain to now 3 causes, right, that resulted in this effect. We can keep going. So why did he get a chemical injury? Yeah, because he dipped his hand into caustic, but also because he didn't treat his hand with dephoterine until an hour and a half later, right? And for anyone unaware, dephoterine is a chemical or a neutralization agent that we carry on our sites. And if you get a chemical injury, you put the dephoterine on the injury and it'll neutralize the chemical and stop the burn from happening. Now, why didn't he treat it with dephoterine? Because he washed his hands with water instead. The reason he did this is because he thought that the liquid he had put his hand into was water. And why did he think this? Because he had a lack of awareness around the risks. It's not uncommon that if you put your hand into a chemical or if you get a chemical exposure on your body, it'll take some time before any pain comes in. You might feel a slight sensation of tingling, but because of this, he assumed that the liquid was safe or wasn't a chemical. So it's really typical, right? If you ask 3 people what the root cause is, they'll all give you 3 different answers. Maintenance might say in this case, the root cause is that there was no cover on the drain, right? It was an oversight by the projects team, and obviously this is the root cause. Health and safety might say the root cause is not using the dephoterine. So they go to great lengths to make sure that the factory is stocked with dephoterine in the event of an injury that needs to be treated. So of course they'll think that this is the root cause. Operations then, if you ask them, they might say, well, actually, no, it's the fact that the acid was in the drain in the first place. That valve, the leaking valve, is obviously the root cause, right? So the thing is, everyone has an opinion, right? Everyone has a perspective and a bias. And the thing is, they're all right. It's all true information, yeah. And this is exactly why you need a cross-functional team to carry out a proper root cause analysis. And whilst their opinions are all true, it's not the complete picture. And the complete picture only comes when you analyze the root cause in the systematic way that I just showed you. So that's what the analysis step is about. It's about identifying the system of causes that resulted in the problem, right? It's not about identifying the one smoking gun, the single root cause. It's about identifying the system of causes. And you can reveal a small section of the system or a very large section of it. But the system is the system, regardless of how much of it you do or don't expose. The more of it you reveal, the more causes that you expose, and therefore the more opportunities for solutions that you're going to be able to identify. Now, this analysis step can be the most challenging. In the example I shared, the causes were very easily established. We just went to the Gemba, we did a minor investigation, a couple of interviews, and it all became very clear. But for more complex process or product related problems, trying to establish cause and effect can be really challenging, and it can require a lot of tools, time, and effort. So step 3 then, right, is solutions. So through our analysis, we've identified the causes that resulted in the problem. In this step now, we need to consider the potential solutions for each cause. And we assess each potential solution against the impact on reducing the problem versus the difficulty of implementing them. So a very simple tool we like to use is a pick chart. Essentially, you place each solution in the appropriate grid, and depending on where it falls, then this determines whether or not you proceed with implementation. And the goal is to implement solutions so that the risk associated with the problem is reduced to an acceptable level. Ultimately, that depends on the business context and the severity of the problem. For example, a complete plant stoppage, right, or a major injury is going to demand a much more thorough approach versus a single production line stoppage or like a minor slip, trip, and fall, right? So the approach you apply has to be, I suppose, effective depending on the level of risk in terms of reducing it. If we go back to the example of the chemical injury again, you can see here we've identified solutions in green boxes for many of the different causes. In this example here, we've actually implemented all these solutions because they were relatively high impact and very low effort. But the more causes we implement solutions for, the more we're going to reduce the risk of the problem from happening again. Each solution is essentially adding an extra layer of protection. And you can see this depicted in the Swiss cheese model down on the bottom left. Essentially, each slice of cheese represents an additional layer of protection against the problem from occurring. The other important point to note is that all these causes, while they led to this specific problem, could also lead to other problems in the future, right? So if I take the example of the preventative maintenance, that's not just specific to this one valve, right? It might also affect other similar valves in the factory. And by introducing PMs on other valves, we prevent similar problems from ever occurring. The same goes for improving training for apprentices around equipment and risk awareness. So as you can imagine, that could prevent a lot of other future problems from ever occurring. And this is the power of good root cause analysis. When it's completed in this way, it opens up opportunities to take preventative actions, right? Get a drink, sorry. I see Noel Hennessy joined the call, but I heard a great saying from Noel. Noel, at some stage I'm going to have to stop giving you credit for the saying, right? But I think Noel heard it from Toyota, and he said, or what the saying is if you see a snake, kill it there and then, right? Don't leave it hide in the bush so it can bite you sometime later in the future. And that's the idea here with all these different causes that we're identifying. They're all potential future snakes, and we want to take preventative action to stop them biting us in the future. So that's an overview of problem solving and root cause analysis, right? The process in general. Now I want to talk about Ciarán's problem solving model. Let me start, right, by just saying that Ciarán and formerly Glanbia have been doing problem solving, I'd say, since inception, right? And in many ways, they've been doing it really well, especially within certain areas of the business. But in late 2022, they decided to place a real strategic focus on it and challenge themselves to be better, more consistent, standardize their ways of working, to improve governance, training, right? All the things that you want when it comes to problem solving within an organization. And as part of that initiative, we implemented what we call our problem solving model. And this was to really formalize the methods that we use and the support and governance structures in place for each. And the idea here is that different problems require different levels of intensity to find solutions. At the bottom of the pyramid is JDI, which stands for Just Do It. And we use JDI when we know what the cause of the problem is or if we can easily establish it. And in theory, JDI should work for about 90% of our problems. These problems, they get captured and tracked as part of our daily, weekly, monthly performance management meetings. Now, if the issue is higher impact, such as a minor safety incident, a quality issue, or maybe a recurring issue, then we're going to want to complete root cause analysis. And this brings me to the second tier, which is RCA. For RCA, we have a standard template similar to an A3 document. It has multiple sections on it and contains several key tools such as 5W2H, Fishbone, 5Ys. And roughly speaking, 10% or less of our issues require RCA methodology. To give you a sense of some numbers, we close about 250 RCAs a year. And they're completed by all departments across the business. It's not something just isolated to quality or business excellence. It involves production, maintenance, engineering, quality, environmental, health and safety, etc. Right? So JDI and RCA, they're best suited when the problem requires a restoration back to baseline. For example, if you have a machine and it's just not working, right? It was working yesterday, today we come in, machine won't turn on. Or if it's producing defects above and beyond what its historical performance is, right? Typically in these sort of instances, something changed, something went wrong, something broke, the standard wasn't followed, or maybe no standard exists, right? And the goal here is to identify the causes and implement corrective and preventative actions. In the instance, though, where we want to make a step change in our performance above and beyond our baseline, DMAIC is the framework then that we like to use at the top of the pyramid. It's not necessary that something went wrong here, right? But it's just that performance isn't where we need it to be. That might be for a multitude of reasons. DMAIC, for anyone who doesn't know, stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. And it's a framework largely based around Six Sigma and statistical principles. And it's generally applied by green and black belts. They're typically larger projects and require a lot of data analysis, maybe even trials. And we tend to use this approach because it's very structured, very methodical. There's various stage gates, to ensure stakeholder alignment as you go through it. Across the business, again, we might only complete 15 to 20 of these within a year, right? But they tend to be very large projects, often very complex in nature, and they might run on for 6 months to 18 months or even longer. It's also not uncommon for problems to move up through the pyramid in their life cycle. In fact, I'd say it's encouraged, right? So what might start out as a JDI might get escalated to an RCA and then eventually even a DMAIC if the complexity or the nature of the problem becomes more apparent. As you go up the pyramid, the time, the resources and the expertise required increases. And as you come down the pyramid then, the application and the relevancy of the methodologies increase. Training is paramount to developing a good problem-solving culture, right? Problem-solving is a very broad topic, and to get competent on the full range of tools and the analysis techniques, it requires a lot of dedicated learning. And to move the dial on the competency of the business, we have our Excellence Academy. It offers a wide range of problem-solving related courses, starting out with the White Belt, which is an online course with a mixture of Six Sigma and Lean modules, and this is delivered via ATU Sligo. The Yellow Belt then is accredited through ATU Sligo, but it's delivered internally, and it consists of 2 full days and 5 different modules, one of which is dedicated to problem solving. The green and the black belts then are Six Sigma and DMAIC specific, and they're delivered through ATU Sligo and MTU Cork. I'd say these tend to be very relevant for our process and engineering teams who deal with process related problems and require that statistical tools and analysis. And a lot of the learnings in the green and black belt program is like, while we might only do 15 to 20 demakes in a year, they get applied daily just as part of their ongoing daily work, right, in terms of monitoring and controlling our processes. After that, then there's the Lean Masters in the UL. And then finally, we've developed and introduced a brand new RCA specific course. It's a 2-day course, and really it builds on the yellow belt and covers more intensive RCA tools and techniques. It's a very practical course, and the idea is to build up the learner's ability and confidence so that they can lead more complex investigations and really take charge on them. I'd say we're in the early stages, but one thing we want to establish is an expectation across the business that depending on your role, you will have, or at least be in the process of getting accredited within the Academy framework. I suppose a skills matrix of sorts. It's a win-win really, because employees get to upskill and self-develop, and the organisation also gets to benefit from the increased skill set. So that's kind of something we've been putting in motion, I suppose, in recent months, and hope to build on in the years to come. You can see here just a couple of images of the RCA leader training that we piloted with the business excellence team in June. So as a team, we're responsible for governing and supporting RCA activity across the organisation. So we felt it was really important that we all went through this course together to upskill ourselves and to standardise the level of support and coaching that we can offer to the business. We have a raft of tools and techniques that we use to standardise and assist in problem solving. So we're always trying to improve these and introduce new supports where possible. One initiative we took on late last year was to develop a handy guidebook for teams to use when they're working through a problem. And we call this our problem solving booklet. So within the document, there's a description of each of the core methodologies, a step-by-step breakdown of the RCA and the DMAIC process, as well as handy how-to guides for each of the core tools that can be used throughout the processes. So your 5W2H, your process map, your timelines, fault trees, fishbones, etc. I'd say this functions really well as a training tool and a coaching tool, whether you're at the Gemba investigating a problem, or for instance during the yellow belt, we'll hand these out during the problem solving module as well. For governance then, look, we've various processes in place across the business to manage JDI, RCA and DMAIC. But just to give you an example of RCA governance, the business excellence team facilitates a fortnightly governance meeting in each of our facilities, right, where the RCA owners provide an update on open RCAs. This meeting also drives various metrics then that get reported centrally. So you can see an example of them here. We found really that what we measure gets managed, and you can see, for example, down the bottom right there, percentage RCAs closed versus opened has been improving over time. We measure this, for instance, because we don't want to get ourselves into a place where we're consistently opening more RCAs than we're closing. We're just creating a backlog then of work, and then we don't have the resources to effectively manage it. So it's important that we track this month on month just to make sure that we're resourcing RCAs appropriately. The other thing is we have a standard set of metrics that get sent out after each RCA review, and these provide an update on RCA activity at each site, right? So in these updates, we look at the numbers of RCAs by problem type. So are they quality, health and safety, performance, which area of the plant are they coming from, which department is owning them. And again, we just find this really keeps it as an area of focus for the business. It also helps with resource allocation and prioritization. So if we see a particular area or department overloaded, for instance, we can lean in then and support them. It's worth mentioning as well then that when we close an RCA, it gets uploaded to a central repository. So anyone across the business can see closed RCAs from other areas of the business. This is probably in its infancy still, but it's something that we've a lot of plans to tap into next year as a means of knowledge sharing across the business. In terms of DMAIC as well then, look, we've a process excellence team. So the business excellence team and the process excellence team sit under an operations and supply chain excellence team. So we're kind of one team really, but we're two separate teams in a sense. And the process excellence team, it's a dedicated team of black belts with significant technical and process experience. They themselves complete projects across the year, but they also support, mentor and coach other teams as well. Last slide then, look, I want to quickly show our roadmap. and emphasize that we're in year 2 really of a 4-year journey. Our vision is to have best-in-class problem solving standardized across the organization. And we still have a while to go to make that a reality. We're still learning, discovering as we go, and by no means do we think we know it all. One thing we do have going for us is we've plenty of problems, right? So we get to put what we're doing to the test. And look, just to close off, then I suppose I want to say, problem solving is for everyone. It's obviously a key part of creating a stable, safe, quality-focused business. But Michael Phelan actually was the head of the operations and supply chain team at Ciarán, and one of the few people I think I found that's equally as passionate about problem solving as I am, right? He talks about the ability to engage with a person or a team who's experiencing a problem. They might be under real pressure, they might be stressed, and by applying the right tools and the right structure, we can support them. We can help them gain a better understanding of the problem. We might even help them manage it, ease the impact, and eventually maybe even resolve it completely, right? And this can really reduce a big burden on someone's shoulders. And I find this is true in business, but also in our personal lives, right? It's much harder because we tend to be more emotionally involved and caught up in personal issues. But if we can apply the same principles to define and analyze problems on a personal level, it can be really transformative, right? My my oldest daughter is 5. She never slept when she was young. So I'd be lying if I said I was able to get any result there, right? But I have had other personal problems where I did apply this sort of methodology and have had good results, right? So look, that's it for me. Thanks very much for your time, and I hope you got something of value from it. Looking forward to taking any questions and having a discussion.
Ciarán, thanks a million. That was fantastic, and it's really, really practical. I put a comment in the chat that I've often been frustrated with how 5 whys is presented in a textbook. There's one answer to every question, and you've just displayed something that I haven't really seen displayed, which is great. There's often more than one answer to every question, and the whole 5 whys thing can explode into a whole load of actions, which is fantastic. So quick run through. Does anybody want to throw in any questions? The idea now is we're going to have a Q&A with Ciarán, and if you want to share your own thoughts about the presentation or your own approach to problem solving on site, who wants to kick off? Adam.
Hey, Steve. Hey, Ciarán. That was excellent.
Hey, how are you?
That was really, really good. Thank you for that. I suppose my question is that I was very interested in the tier system of how you clarify what's a just do it, what needs root cause, and what needs more in-depth DMAIC analysis. Because I think one thing I've seen in my experience is that people will try to apply DMAIC to everything or just do it to everything, and they kind of treat kind of use the one methodology to go after every single problem, regardless of the scale of complexity or whatever. And I suppose I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you guys figured out how to know when it's just do it or when you need to really escalate to a DMAIC stage, because I found that very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's definitely a big problem. I've shared stories in the past, but I've seen lots of issues in the past that dragged on for months or years, and engineering teams were applying statistical tools trying to get a resolution. And often, to anybody with Six Sigma training, every problem is a Six Sigma problem, right? But that's not the case. And often, you're a foot from the wall, but you need to take a step back and actually, do we have the basics right here? Do we have a standard? Are we following the standard? Have we used simple tools like defining the problem, using maybe an is not, really simple basic stuff. And in my experience, it's not uncommon that when you actually apply the basic tools, you actually get the result, and you never needed to do all the Six Sigma stuff to begin with. So I think we've developed quite a mature way of thinking with this. For DMAIC, really, as I said, it's generally those more technical issues that there is a lot of data involved. There's a lot of maybe governance required. There's a lot of stakeholders, and really it needs a large team. There's a lot of factors. It needs analysis. It needs the Six Sigma tools, and they're the problems that we tend to try and apply to the DMAIC framework too. If a problem just starts, we tend to go through the JDI and the RCA approach first. And if we get it to RCA and we discover that actually this is much bigger, there's a kind of worms here, there's an element of improvement required as opposed to just restoration, then it can move to the DMAIC side of the house. So yeah, look, I'm not sure what to say other than I completely agree with you. And I suppose the pyramid is our answer to that problem, really.
So like an escalation process as opposed to DMAIC kind of a thing.
Exactly, yeah. Or at least a really good triage by the team. So that process excellence team that I mentioned, they will triage problems and see, well, do they fit the DMAIC approach? And we've often kicked problems back and said, actually, no, it's not a DMAIC. Do an RCA on it first and see if you get a win there. But yeah, that's how we got there. And I'd say that pyramid, just to give you a bit of background there, we did benchmarking facilitated by the ICB. Two other colleagues, not myself, but they went on various benchmarking visits to some very large multinational pharma and medical device companies. And that's what they actually took away from those benchmarking visits. They said, you know what, we need to implement this model. And it came from that, really. So it's based on benchmarking, but our own internal experience as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, just to add to that point, you know, we facilitate a lot of process improvements and people taking on projects, and that kind of triage of just the problem statement even. Sometimes you read the problem statement and you're thinking, is this a just do it? Do we need to go through DMAIC or 8 steps? Because it's kind of jumping out as this is so well stated. It's kind of a, you know, a no-brainer. And like you say, some of it then is a small team can do a bit of root cause analysis. That triage process is something definitely could be employed across the board in many companies, I think.
Yeah, because I find myself often trying to pair people back. You know, it's because like when you're hammered, the whole world looks like a nail kind of a thing. You know,
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, if you have no milk, you go in the shop get milk. You know, you don't need to do this. You don't need to go and visit the cow and see how the what happened with the cow. You know.
Yeah.
Just myself, Ciarán, I suppose, look, from what I've learned from working with yourself is the cause and effect, you know, where, you know, that example that you gave of the operator burning the hand, when you actually went through the cause and effects, it brings in other stakeholders as well. Like, it's not just, you know, a point of gun and shoot who you think is actually at the causing the problem. So I think using the cause and effect analysis opens it up then that other stakeholders then have to look internally to see, well, you know, have we got a standard in place? Are we following our standards? Is the communication channels universally communicated? So it does open up loads of other avenues that develops the culture within the site as much as the problem solving techniques.
Barry's got a hand up.
Hi, Ciarán, that was great. One question we would say in the work that we do, the most difficult part of all this is to just initiate the process itself, like put your hand up and say that there is a problem. Because sometimes people, like in the example you gave, it was a kind of egregious, obvious problem. But there might be other times when people might try to hide a problem. Like we've worked with a lot of companies, like you mentioned Sanofi there, we're still working with Sanofi. But it sounds like a tier law, and it's safe for people, perceived safe enough to put your hand up and say, look, we've got a problem here. But have you applied this process in other organizations where maybe the culture wasn't there and people were concerned maybe about flagging certain things that weren't so obvious?
Yeah, definitely. So Ciarán was the first food organization that I worked for. Previous to that, it would have been medical device and pharma. And very much the problem solving structures are kind of, I suppose, defined by the quality team, right? So, you know, the regulations and the customers and the audits define that you need a quality management system. And as part of that, you're required to do CAPA on specific quality issues. And it's all very structured, and there's a flow there, there's a procedure in terms of what's an event report, say, or what's a deviation report. So I think there's great value in that being with the quality team, but what you find is there's a whole lot of grey that sits outside of that. And you tend to just get so busy with quality related stuff that you have to do, that the other stuff, kind of sits out there on its own, right? Maybe the health and safety stuff will get covered all right because, you have a health and safety team on site. If there's an issue, they're going to push for it. We're not as directed by quality in Ciarán. Like, everything is quality driven, of course, but the frameworks are a bit more universally applied, I would say, across the business for performance, quality, health and safety related issues. So I think that's a positive in that sense. But we still do have guidelines in place. For instance, across the business, if there's an incident like that, you have to do an RCA. If there's a specific quality issue, you have to do an RCA. So we do have guidelines, and we do try to adhere to them. And then culturally, I'd say it's pretty good compared to places I worked previously. I think we've a long history doing a lot of these in a year. I don't think people are afraid of them. They might be afraid of the work that comes with them, but I think they're not, and we're constantly trying to remove that barrier to entry as well. We want people to know that, hey, an RCA can take an hour or it can take 6 months. It doesn't mean that just because you open one, there's a huge burden of work on you. If it's the right thing to do, we try to encourage it and try to make that barrier to entry as seamless as possible. Which, yeah, look, it is a challenge. It's a challenge everywhere. But that's kind of our approach to it, I suppose. But no, does that answer your question, does it?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Will, did you want to add in on that? Sorry, your hand is up.
Yeah, just to build on that. So sorry, just to introduce myself, I'm Will O'Carroll, and I'm the business excellence team manager for Ciarán. So I've had the absolute pleasure of working with Ciarán as he's brought this problem solving approach to life across the organization. But I suppose, look, the culture piece is critical, and it's something that we battle every day. We are far from having this, done and dusted, right? What we have found very, very useful is having problem-solving review forums happen across each of our sites on, be it a fortnightly or monthly basis. And that's where people get together, they look at RCAs, they look at the problems that are happening, and they have a chat about them, right? And that's good, okay? So this sharing happening about the problems that are coming up and arising across our sites. More specifically, though, what I've probably done at an executive level within the business is brought problem solving into sharp focus, right? So recently we had an example, and it was a first, okay? We had somebody come along in front of the entire executive leadership team and talk about an issue or a problem that arose in relation to soup shorts, okay? So effectively, we were overproducing soup, right? So there was waste. And they spoke about that problem in front of the whole executive team and brought it to life. They showed and doubled down on the approach that we were taking to resolve the problem. 6 months previously, that would not have been possible, right? And 9 months previously, it wouldn't have been tolerated, full stop. So we are constantly trying to educate the executive as to the power of their reaction in a time of crisis, in a time when there are problems, and we're getting there slowly, but it's not a home run quite yet.
Sounds like you've got a practice in place, though, and there's a forum for those conversations to happen.
There is, Barry, for sure. And I feel as well, I'm probably empowered. And if I come across issues where, there's negative feedback about the sharing of a problem, I will broach that with people involved. Like, you have to crack a couple of eggs here to make the omelette.
Good.
Robert, hand up. You're on mute, I think.
Thanks a million, Ciarán, and the Dublin Network. Great webinar, and well done to the OPEX team and colleagues in Ciarán. Great great exemplar for a lot of businesses around, like, you know, and thanks for sharing. I unfortunately missed a little bit of the talk there. I had the joys of working from home. I was able to put out the washing, but then when it starts to shower, I had to go out and dash out and get it, like, you know, a bit like Paddy Cullen chasing back with Mikey Sheehy about to take the freeze. So anyway, just it was touched on there a little bit, prioritizing problems. Say if you're starting off, like, you know, or whatever, like, you know, you can come up with lots of problems and stuff like that. So how do you approach prioritizing the problems when you've got limited resources?
I suppose like you'd prioritize anything really, Robert, you know, you capture them anyway, get a list of them, and then you use some sort of means to prioritize them based on, well, what's the risk of this associated with the business? Is it a health and safety risk? Is it a quality risk? Is it neither? Is it just a minor performance issue? And based on that, you need to prioritize them. What I would say is prioritization is key. You know, you have to resource these things really well, or you'd find that you set everyone else up. You set the whole team up for failure. So at a leadership level, you need to make the hard decision over prioritization and what you're going to do. And you're better off focusing on one or two things really well, getting them done, and then moving on. I've seen so many examples of trying to do everything, and you just end up achieving nothing. The whole team gets burnt out. You don't actually achieve anything. Problem solving doesn't appear to be effective because you know the whole team gets disengaged with it. So that's the antithesis of what we're trying to achieve. So I suppose that governance piece is helpful. We measure it. We look at the number of problems by site, by teams, by people, by area. And if there's an issue of overloading, we'll say, well, what are we going to put on hold? Can't keep going like this. Need to put something on hold. Or this is going on 6 months. Do we need to close this? Is it still a priority? Did something change? And have those hard conversations and actually prioritize and move on. I think it's critical. But there's no easy way of doing it, just through a structured approach.
Here, just to follow on from that, I was interested in what you said about the governance over closing out all the issues that were raised, and obviously that will depend on the amount of resource you allocate. Could you talk a little bit more about how you resource and how you maybe need to add a bit of resource to problem solving, or vice versa?
Yeah, like I suppose the resources might come from the business excellence team, for instance. You know, we might have capacity to lean in and support a team or a person, or we might just need to stop other problems and to give that person space to work on the specific problem that they're working on. So yeah, it's just we do that through the governance forums, and by measuring the numbers, we're able to do that, you know. Sorry, was there another part to your question?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Questions from Porrick. Good to see you, Porrick.
Hi, Steve. Yeah, sorry, apologies. I don't have the laptop in today, so no camera, but I am here. Just a quick question. First of all, thanks very much. Great presentation. But I was just curious when you kind of introduced. It was interesting to see the 5 whys and then the various trees branching off it and getting the other stakeholders involved. But did you find that there was sort of an air of defence among certain departments and teams? And if so, kind of how did you overcome that? Like in the example given with the burn injury, where kind of, you know, could maintenance have been saying, oh geez, well that was nothing to do with us because that was due to the faulty valve and it should have been, you know, a health and safety issue as opposed to a maintenance issue. So I was just curious to see, did that come up at all?
For that specific issue, no, absolutely not. That was a real rallying of the troops, and we very quickly just addressed it and I suppose exposed all the issues and moved on. There's no blame or, you know, anything like that would make people feel defensive. It is something we've discussed previously. I'd say it's not that common, but you know, it does happen across the business, in any business. And one of the things we kind of discussed was the need maybe to contract up front if you're getting into an investigation that you know is going to be a little bit sensitive. You get the team in a room and you kind of make that contract and say, look, we might have to have uncomfortable conversations. We might be asking questions that are a bit uncomfortable. Are we all okay with that? Like, we're all here for the better good. Nobody's going to get, penalised or put under fire. We just want to understand what happened, get the truth out, and ultimately remove the risk to the business and move on. So I think that's something you can do preventatively if you know you're kind of going to get into that. But look, in this instance, no, we didn't. I'd say it's a rarity, and that's probably just a testament to the culture,
Great, thank you.
Gareth, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just briefly, just for everyone else, I have the pleasure of working in the same team as Ciarán. So first of all, obviously great presentation. And I know Ciarán's all capable in this space, but I think his passion for this field comes across so well whenever he gets the opportunity. And look, obviously we're hugely blessed to have him on our team. I just wanted to build on the point around the prioritization, because there's probably something that Ciarán sort of helped to establish across the business over the last year that's really helped with that, and that is in doing the 5W2H, being very clear as to what the impact of the problem actually is. And that was probably a bit of a gap. Before, it's easy enough to sort of, this is what happened, and these are the circumstances, this is the time that it happened, these are the people that were there, but what did it cost us, and what is it costing us? And that leads straight into then, okay, is it a high, medium, or low priority? And that's not to say the low priorities don't get done and they're not on the log, but in terms of managing that resource, that one of those two H's is how much, and that was a huge blind spot before. So just, if people aren't already doing that, I'd encourage them to sort of bottle that piece of information as part of their initial sort of capture of the issue, because that is a bit of a game changer, as simple as it sounds. So, and the other thing is the course that Ciarán ran with us, or piloted with us just a month ago. There were some photos of it, genuinely excellent, comfortably the best thing I've done on this, having been in CI now for 5 or 6 years, which is, relative to my age, quite a long time.
Yes, thanks very much, Gareth. Gareth deserves a lot of credit as well in this space, because he's put a lot of work into this too. He wouldn't say that, but that's the truth. So, thanks, Gareth.
I wouldn't dare take any of your thunder.
Noel, you wanted to come in? You're on mute.
Now I'm okay now. Can you hear me now? Yeah, good stuff. So well done, Ciarán. I suppose what I wanted just to touch on was, I loved the example you gave about the young apprentice getting the burn. I thought it was a brilliant example, because 99 times out of 100, we would have got to, he should have been retrained, he should have known, he should have understood, and we closed the RCA and that had been the end of it, you know what I mean? So to me, that's really powerful, and certainly it's something I can reflect back on in my time in Lake Region, when we adopted the Toyota 8-step model. Literally up till then, I would say 9 out of 10 problems, retraining didn't work, give out a verbal warning. That was the thing. Whereas once we had that mindset change, suddenly retraining on its own wasn't a satisfactory countermeasure, So look, and again, as Gareth said, this is your space. You're brilliant at it, and that. I'd say there's an awful lot of people on the call, Ciarán, who's wondering, and I'm sorry if I'm dropping yourself and Will in on this, could you share that booklet, a soft copy, a PDF maybe of that booklet? Is that a question for Will rather than you?
I'll leave Will answer that one. Yes.
We'll let Ciarán take that away and discuss it internally, not put him under pressure on the call. It was one of the things that struck me as well, and even going back to the drain incident, and I'm going back, Richie, to our visit to Toyota last year, and one of the things I remember was our little induction through the quality department, and they put us in a darkened room, and we had to listen to the call. But the message out of all that was, so what it was, we listened to the 999 call that happened in the States when Toyota had the recall issue over the stick and accelerator pedal. But the point they made was, that was obviously, Ciarán, to quote you, the symptom. That's what happened at the end of the day. But they were saying there were so many points where somebody could have said something before that happened, but nobody did. And I know this is a huge area and it's so hard to get to this level, but Toyota from day one instilled into everybody, if you see something wrong, shout about it. And they instill into every cell leader, when somebody shouts, you must do something. And You know, you could even go back to the drain and say, well, somebody noticed there was no cover on that ages ago, but said nothing. Somebody else noticed there was caustic in the drain, but said nothing. Somebody else noticed that actually there was a gap in there. So all the time there was opportunities, and it's really, really hard to get this into any culture. And I struggle with businesses. And again, I think Adam was talking to us earlier about leadership starting with I. Like, you know, it's all about the kind of, do I do it because I'm told to do it? There's a sign on the wall saying, shout up if you see anything. Or do I look around me and see, is there anybody else shouting up? Because if they're not shouting up, I'm not going to see what happens. So it's either something that we do or it's something that we say we do, but actually it happened by exception, you know. So I think that's what I took away from Toyota on that. And I thought, wow, trying to get to that culture could take a long time.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And that example I showed there there was 15 why questions in that example, right? I guarantee you I could keep going and turn that into 100 why questions. You go deeper and deeper because cause and effect is just fractal in nature, right? And you can go as deep as you want to go. And the deeper you go, you're going to land on those real cultural issues. But, you know, we don't tend to go there. I'd say there's a lot of work in going there. And if you do land there, is there any appetite to change it? I don't know. But you can land there through good root cause analysis if you're willing to push it that far. So look, it's a good point, Steve. Definitely agree with you.
So listen, we're 2 minutes to 2, and I don't want to go over time. I really thought that was an excellent practical application by an Irish company who are, you know, probably at the forefront of problem solving, or, you know, well established. My thanks to Ciarán and all the other people who helped set this up. The idea of this network is it's free. Anybody can attend if you have an interest in problem solving, lean. We're really trying to get companies to talk to each other. That's the big goal. We're going to have Alan back from Admin Sheds next month, and he's going to talk about their journey. A few of us went down to see them in February. Ciarán, I think you were there as well at one stage.
Yeah, it was very worthwhile.
It's and on the back of that, we'll have another visit to Admin. But Alan's going to talk about their journey. It's a small company. It's very, very relevant to lots of SMEs in particular. We're hoping that the following month we will have Mary Hickey from Tala Hospital, and Mary will talk about lean in a healthcare context, completely different altogether. And again, we hope to organise a visit to some of their greenbelt type projects that they've done in healthcare. So hopefully that will appeal to, you know, again, a different set of people. And we're looking to have another agile talk about lean agile and software in October with Claudio Perrone. So they're the next 3 coming up. Look, you can ask anybody if they want to register with us. They'll get an email. You can put it in your calendar. But I think that's all. Unless anybody else, Stephen, have we anything else I forgot?
No, we're all good. All good.
We're all good. We're all good. Okay. So thanks, folks, for attending. Ciarán, thanks once again, and I hope to see you all soon. Enjoy the summer.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Lads.
Thanks, guys. Goodbye.
Super, Steve. Well done. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Let you go. Thanks.